Here we've got a lot of news down in Eugene thanks to this guy, a one-man wrecking crew from KVAL television in Eugene. We have Tom Ward on the show. Tom, how are you today?
I'm doing good, guys. Thanks.
It's good to have you on. Now, you had this story first, and I believe it was that, and I'm paraphrasing, so correct me if I'm wrong, Mike Bellotti met with Ernie Kent way back on February 22nd, and in that meeting, behind closed doors, Mike Bellotti let Ernie Kent go. Is that right?
Yeah, and basically what happened was Mike Bellotti also asked Ernie when he would like to, have this come out. When he basically put it on Ernie Kent's terms. Basically, we've all seen this coming, and, it wasn't a big shock. I mean, some people questioned the timing, but honestly, this was the nicest thing that Mike Bellotti could have done for Ernie Kent. It now gives him a chance, as my source tells me, to have a televised audition for his next job. Then he's able to go to the Final Four. He's able to go to the national, collegiate coaches meetings, network, and I'm sure has already begun looking for his next gig.
But they don't have this out there in the public, right? I mean, this is something that you caught on to. Otherwise, this would all still be under wraps.
Well, as you know, Eugene is a somewhat tight-knit community. I've lived there for 20 years now, and it really comes down to knowing people and, relationships with people. So it wasn't necessarily that I caught on to it. Someone trusted me with the information, and that's really all I can say. Honestly, it's kind of a sad day for Oregon basketball, and I'm just going to sort of interject here because, Ernie has run a good program. I mean, the last month and a half down there, we have talked a lot about the football program and all the problems that they're having off the field. That has never really been the situation with Oregon basketball. He's graduated players early. He's brought in guys who you felt good about. And I don't mean to kick the football program while it's down, but that's just the facts right now. It has been no fun going to work the last, since the Rose Bowl, really.
The difference is that they did go to the Rose Bowl, and we can all talk about good guys, but it comes down to how many games you win.
No question.
So when does this become official? I mean, when does Mike Bellotti say something? Thanks, we appreciate the 13 years, but here you go.
Well, at this point, I mean, I think you'd have to look for something after the Pac-10 tournament. I think, honestly, what has happened now that the cat is out of the bag, and suffice it to say, these are the facts. This has happened. It's done. I think it'll be after the Pac-10 tournament. I think that caused, Oregon to recoil just a bit, not from the standpoint of, should we have a second thought about this? Just when should we, announce it? So in order to, maybe save a little face, they'll now wait. But it was already a done deal. And, the one exception, and I know you guys have probably read the report, but I'll just reiterate, is Kenny Payne. As a lot of people know, Kenny Payne is plugged in with a guy named Worldwide West who, has ties with different AAU basketball, and he's ties with Nike, and he's very plugged in to many regions of college basketball, whether it's Detroit, Chicago, now the Northwest, the South, different AAU groups. And from my understanding of the people I talk to, it's possible and very likely that Kenny Payne will stay at Oregon because he is plugged in with Nike and some of these other, just the landscape. It's a very odd situation to be talking about because, I remember the days when Oregon was a very, sort of homegrown operation. They were trying to build the Casanova Center. They built the Gossen Sky Suites, and now, as we know, they've become, a conglomerate. I mean, it's a very corporate feeling there, and, that's just the way it is. And so there's a lot of things going on inside that building that we'll never know about, but I do know that, a lot of these decisions aren't just, Mike Bellotti or whoever the athletic director is at that time, and you guys know that as well.
So if Ernie Kent has been gone, and they've known that since the 22nd, I would assume then that they've already put together a list of names of people that they are going to go after.
Yeah, you would think so. And, I mean, obviously we all know the usual name, Mark Few at Gonzaga. And, the story goes that last year, Pat Kilkenny was trying to get Mark Few, and that's why we didn't hear anything about Ernie Kent until after the Final Four. Apparently, according to, and once again, the true facts are sometimes, the minute details are sometimes murky, but the basic premise is that Hugh was asking for in the neighborhood of $3 million a year or $25 million, 10 years guaranteed, a $25 million 10-year contract.
Ooh.
And Oregon backed away from that and said, we're going to give Ernie another year. So obviously there's other names floating out there, Jamie Dixon, PJ Carlissimo. I mean, they're going to go and get a big name. I mean, look what they do. They get George Horton when they start up baseball. They fire Bev Smith, the best women's basketball player in that program's history. They go get Paul Westhead. They're going to go get a big name to fill this job because that's what they do nowadays.
Tom Ward, KVAL in Eugene. He's our guest here. Broke the story about Ernie Kent. Now, you're saying the whole staff, with the exception of, what was his name, Kenny?
Yeah, Kenny Payne.
Kenny Payne. I was thinking Pierce.
And he has been in charge of recruiting, Detroit, Chicago. I mean, he's the reason Malik Harrison and Tawan Porter ended up at Oregon.
Now, what about this Dunlap guy? Because weren't there reports that the Dunlap cat was brought in to be the next head coach if Ernie Kent didn't work out? Is he going to get fired?
From my understanding, all the assistants are gone with the exception of Payne. Dunlap, also, I believe that his contract reads that if they let him go after 1 year, they'd have to pay him the next year. And that means they're going to have to write a $300,000 check. Now, that may, get worked out in some other fashion. From my understanding, he is not going to be the next head coach, and they are going to go out and get a big name, get somebody who will, they believe, give the program more cachet as they're moving into a new arena. And let's be honest. I mean, if we weren't talking about them building a new arena, we're probably not talking about Ernie Kent losing his job.
Mm. So you would assume that the Randy Bennett's of the world wouldn't fit that mold. You're thinking more along the lines of, again, the Mark Fuse or a Tubby Smith, Mark.
Tubby Smith is definitely another name that has been talked about and not just thrown out in various circles. That is a guy known to be, well thought of and liked, by the people who are going to make the decision.
Well, how much will they pay then?
Well, that's a good question. After, few asked for, 2.5 over 10 or $3 million a year, whichever you can really narrow it down to. I mean, you're paying Chip Kelly 1.8, but he's a new coach. But as you guys mentioned, he did just go to the Rose Bowl. So are you going to pay him more than Chip Kelly? That's a good question, I guess.
I guess it depends on the name and what you can work out. All right, good stuff. Now, you think Jeremiah Masoli's guilty, Tom?
I can't say that. I honestly do not know. It doesn't look good. It does not look good when your quarterback is even mentioned with something like this. I mean, you guys with the Blazers a few years ago, I mean, it was, whether guys got convicted or whatever, it was another black eye. It was just one thing after another with the Blazers back in the early to mid-2000s. And this certainly has that feeling from a kind of a smaller standpoint. I mean, you're just going, you've got to be kidding me with these guys.
This one didn't seem to land with much of a thud, though. I mean, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of shock or outrage over the MIP and the attempted breaking into a car.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, look at this and they sort of roll their eyes, and it's an MIP. I mean, obviously, if he'd have gotten into a car, it could have been a lot worse, but he didn't. Right now, I think people are sort of, like I said, kind of rolling their eyes because it's like, what can you do? And honestly, in Chip Kelly's defense, and he's said this, you can't babysit, 108 players, 24/7.
And you can't. Yeah, I don't want to get back into that whole thing. I think that thing's come and gone. But you're right. It's almost like people are, they're desensitized now. Like MIP, oh, that's nothing.
And then Bush League.
Come on.
Call me when you assault somebody.
Yeah, at least he's not, he didn't get thrown in jail, that kind of thing.
Tom, great stuff digging up all this info. I appreciate you taking time for us today.
Well, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Okay, that's Tom Ward. He is in Eugene down there, KVAL television. Guys dialed in.